It's carnival time for Miami's huge community of exiled Cubans, and there's a note of great expectation about the festivities. Many of these people believe that by this time next year, they'll be dancing in the streets of Havana. Despite the absence of any hard evidence that Fidel Castro is in political trouble at home, the idea has caught on here that his days are numbered. Miami, as Cuban as it is American, is on hold. At the Santiago town council-in-exile, really just a social club, Cubans while away the time playing dominoes and drinking beer. A bust of Jose Marti, the father of Cuban independence, holds pride of place. But Fidel Castro, the man who's dominated modern Cuban history, seems determined to go on doing just that. So far, he's held out against the democratic tide that swept both Latin America and Cuba's East European allies. Miami Cubans are not alone in asking, for how much longer? But at a student rally in Havana's Revolution Square earlier this month, both Castro and his brother Raul, number 2 in the hierarchy, were treated as conquering heroes. Nationalist sentiment still runs deep in Cuba, and the government equates opposition to Castro with plain treachery. It also presents rallies like this, carefully stage-managed though they are, as evidence that Castro still enjoys widespread popular support. There's no doubt Fidel Castro's lost none of his personal charisma. He tells the crowd that any American aggression against Cuba will cost the United States dear, a warning he's repeated off and on for 30 years. Castro's audience listens, apparently spellbound, as he rehearses his new argument that Cuba is now the only bastion against US imperialism in Latin America, left to face the Yankees alone. For years in Cuba, the revolutionary slogan was "Nation or Death." Castro adopted it himself in 1960, shortly after taking power. But now he's presented his people with new options, socialism or death. A choice some find it much harder to make, especially as the hardships of the system begin to outweigh the benefits. For ordinary Cubans, these are difficult times. Shopping remains a frustrating process of long searches and endless waits. What little there is to buy is shoddy and expensive. In the dollar economy, it's a different story. In this hard currency supermarket, where filming's prohibited, the shelves are full and queues short. In the current climate of sacrifice, these separate facilities for tourists and diplomats cause enormous resentment. The government's much more anxious to put the country's advanced health service on display. Health, a personal obsession of Castro's, has long been the revolution's great showcase. At Havana's William Soler Hospital for Children, Dr. Eric Martinez, its deputy director, introduces a patient who's just undergone open heart surgery. The hospital's named after a teenager who died in the war against Batista and was the first to be founded by the revolutionary government. It's probably the best of its kind in Latin America. The little girl's father says he fought for Castro during the revolution and would do so again. The generations of Cubans have grown up taking good hospitals and schools for granted. They want what people in the outside world call the good life, consumer choice and personal freedom to think, speak and travel as they wish. And it's students who've made the most outspoken attack on the government's refusal to bend. In January, at least 2 students from the mathematics faculty of Havana University were arrested for demanding reform and calling Castro a traitor. The only graffiti visible around the university dates back to the revolutionary era. But behind closed doors and among friends, students are beginning to ask questions. A foreign student talked about the reaction to last year's hurricane of change that swept Eastern Europe.
Well, basically, I can just tell you about the reactions of my own friends. Most of them used to say that, Frank, it seems like they're going to be trouble. And it seems like the only country that doesn't want to change is this one. But at the end, when all of the countries they block out, it's going to be isolated, and at the end it will have to cooperate with those other countries, with the changes going on in the world. And most of them are they don't know what's going to happen, but they want the change.
They feel something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you think that the present government, President Castro, will change willingly? Or do you think that something will force it to, whether it's an economic pressure or a political
I rather think,
or even a military pressure?
I don't think he will change willingly. I think it will be on force. You have to force, because if you follow most of his speeches, his ideas are to follow the line he has always followed. Now, the only way he'll be able to change or be willing to change is when there's no other way out. You have to change.
It's here at the Soviet embassy that the most crucial talks on Cuba's future will soon be held, when a high-level delegation arrives from Moscow to hammer out a new trade agreement. It's doubtful Castro can survive without continued Soviet support.
Is there the possibility that domestic political pressure in the Soviet Union might force the Soviet government to reduce its overall foreign aid commitment and its aid to Cuba in particular?
Видите, эти вопросы, связанные сейчас с повышением эффективности сотрудничества и
This is connected with the question of effective cooperation between Cuba and other countries.
думаем, что вот в
It'll soon be
ближайшее время
examined in
будут
detail.
детально рассмотрены, взвешены. Здесь очень много наносного,
There's a great deal on
очень
the
много
surface of this
поверхностного
cooperation.
в оценках, прежде всего, сотрудничества. То, что у нас есть взаимная
The
заинтересованность,
Soviet
это
Union and Cuba
бесспорно.
have mutual
Поэтому
interests.
сейчас задача
That's
найти
beyond
пути
dispute.
и повышение эффективности сотрудничества,
But
и
we
его
must raise the
углубление.
effectiveness of our cooperation.
Причем я хочу заметить, что
And
вот
as
при
well as
работе
that,
этой
balance
комиссии,
will
о
be
которой
one of
мы
the main
говорили,
issues which
вопросы
the Commission
экономического
that's coming here
сотрудничества,
soon
повышение его
will be looking
эффективности,
at.
сбалансированности будут, конечно, одними из главных.
Whatever the doubts about the future of the revolution, Cuba remains Cuba. The shops may be empty, but Havana reverberates to the rhythms of the Caribbean. Cubans may not be able to eat very well, and a pair of Western jeans bought on the black market for dollars eats up a month's wages. But they can dance for nothing. The song asks, who dances here? There's no irony intended, but some Cubans say Castro, now isolated in his own hemisphere, can't go on calling the tune alone much longer. At the student rally, a more famous song harks back to the revolution's heyday in the 60s. Here, there's a deliberate connection. The Cuban government's worldview has hardly changed in a quarter of a century. There's no outward sign of dissent within the Cuban government or armed forces. And if Castro is out of time with the rest of the world, there's no sign his people are ready to overthrow him. But as any Western observer in Cuba discovers, it's not outward signs that matter. Events like this, which Cubans have little choice but to attend, don't prove much. According to US figures, the average number of Cubans fleeing by boat to Florida was 1 a month 5 years ago. Now it's 40.